We all know that folate is vital for us when we're trying to conceive. Our body uses folate to aid in DNA production and cell division. So as adults, folate is important for us as it helps to produce new cells to keep our body functioning at top level. When we're trying to conceive, folate is vital as it's required not only for our health, but also for our baby. Obviously, the miracle of life requires a lot of cell division. We start with a single cell, an egg, which is implanted with male DNA from sperm, which then divides and divides and divides to multiply cell numbers. Then, along with more cell division, cell differentiation occurs, which produces all the different body parts and bodily systems. Folate deficiency in mothers is highly linked to neural tube defects. So much so that in 2009, Australia brought in mandatory fortification of folate for flour used for bread making in order to try to reduce the number of children born with these defects. Neural tube defects are a group of disorders that are characterised by an opening in the spine or brain that remains from early development in the womb. A common condition that you might have heard of is spina bifida. Spine and brain fusion occurs so early in pregnancy that you may not even realise that you're pregnant, which is why it's important to get adequate amounts of this important nutrient before you conceive. So how do we meet our requirements of this important nutrient? One of the best sources of folate is fruit and vegetables, especially leafy greens like spinach and kale. The downside is that folate can easily be lost through processing, cooking, and storage. Research shows that many of us don't meet our recommended fruit and veggie intakes. However, one study found that people were more likely to drink fruit and veggie juices than eat whole fruit and veg. So, the question is, are green juices a good source of folate? Well, let's start by looking at store-bought juices. And the answer is generally no. Store-bought juices are not a good source of folate. Store-bought juices can often wait weeks before they're consumed, giving plenty of time for the folate to degrade. The folate in juices found in clear packaging, which is exposed to light, will break down even faster than the folate found in cardboard or opaque packaging. Furthermore, many commercial juices are heat treated before packaging to decrease bacterial content. However, this treatment also degrades a lot of the natural folate content. Some companies opt to fortify their juices with additional folate to help boost folate levels again. However, the acidic nature of juices means that added folate will also degrade, meaning that the amount written on the label may not be present at all. So, if you're going to choose a store-bought juice, opt for one with opaque packaging, which has been fortified with added folate, but don't expect it to meet all of your folate requirements. So what about freshly squeezed juices? Well, I've got some good news here. Research shows that as long as juices are freshly squeezed and immediately consumed, folate levels are just as high as eating fresh fruit or vegetables. The juicing technique itself doesn't reduce folate, just the storage. So if you're trying to boost your folate intake, a freshly squeezed green juice or smoothie each day can be a really good idea. Obviously, it's essential to include the pulp of the fruit and vegetables as well, otherwise you'll be discarding a lot of the folate from that. While freshly squeezed juice can be a great source of folate, it's important to remember that it's also a concentrated source of fruit sugar, so it can be high in kilojoules. It can also increase blood sugar levels, so be careful of juices if you're trying to watch your weight or if you have diabetes. Eating whole fruit or vegetables are usually lower kilojoule options and don't tend to cause as much of a spike in blood sugar levels. but we need to consider how to prepare our whole fruits and vegetables. One interesting study researched the effect of different cooking and processing techniques on folate levels in various legumes and veggies. They found that canning processes resulted in the highest amount of folate loss, causing up to 77% reduction. The other processes that resulted in high folate losses were blanching and boiling. However, the study found that steaming and microwave cooking caused very little loss of folate in vegetables and legumes. So, the best options for folate are steamed vegetables either cooked in a steamer or a microwave. The other thing to note is that the fresher your fruits and veggies are, the less folate will be lost. So, in an ideal world, we'd all grow our own fruit and veggies, or at least buy them locally to reduce food miles, which contributes to a reduction in folate. The best way to ensure that you're meeting your folate requirements is to eat a diet that is high in minimally processed fruit, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. Finally, although it's essential to eat a diet rich in folate as possible, especially in the lead up to pregnancy, I'd also recommend fortifying your diet with a folic acid supplement. A supplement doesn't replace the folate in your diet, but it is an important
Thank you so
addition.
much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to watch today's episode. I care about you and I really hope that you found it valuable. Now, as you guys know, the best way to get results is to be accountable. So I'd love you to leave a note about what you found most impactful or how you're going to translate this advice into action in the comments box below. I promise you that I will read every single comment. And if you haven't subscribed already, make sure that you hit the subscribe button so that you get alerts whenever I post another episode. I'd also love you to join us at our live chat about today's episode on Facebook Live. For those who are interested, I'm also going to be posting some additional tips and tricks about this on my website, so come over and visit me at melaniemcgrice.com. Oh, and when you come over, make sure that you register for one of my free meal plans. That will register you as part of my community and give you access to my private coaching emails, some special giveaways, and some special things which I just don't share anywhere else. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time on Nourish. My online program, 8 Steps for Boosting Your Fertility, is coming up. Want to prepare your body for pregnancy? Join us by registering at melaniemcgrice.com/join.